This is Wildcat Country.
It's only right. The ball's in his hands. A milestone victory for Arizona. Simon says championship.
All the inside scoop on U of A athletics.
It's up for the end zone. Arizona has scored the touchdown. Wildcats win.
Let's go to work, brother.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country, presented by Backcourt Marketing. I'm Eric Cohen, along with Shane Dale. Shane, once again, the news isn't great when it comes to Wildcat football, but it's not the worst week we've had. Actually, there's a lot of positive things that we're going to talk about in terms of Arizona athletics this week, and one of them is a football team who played really, really well as we expect, or as we would not necessarily have as expected against USC last week. But we're going to have our friend Lamont Lovett, the color announcer for the Wildcat football team, join us here shortly. But Shane, first, your initial thoughts on what you saw on Saturday night's football game. Not too bad, huh?
We did one of our super scientific Twitter polls, Eric, the other day, and we asked fans, how do you feel about the future of Arizona football now compared to the beginning of the season? And most people feel pretty good. 52% said about the same, 38% said more optimistic, and 10% said less optimistic. I'm probably in about like the camp that was about the same, even though I expected them to have a win or two by now. And it changes from week to week. Obviously, everyone felt like crap after the Colorado game. Everyone's feeling a little bit better now. And it's crazy that a program on a 20-game losing streak, their fans might feel a little bit better right now than the team up north that's 5-3. But it feels like that's where we're at right now. But, and as we know, support for head coaches in football is fleeting. It's very much a week-to-week thing. But I think we saw certain things click with this team, Eric, that we hadn't seen most of the season against USC. And at the very least, heading into this game against Cal, and I'm interested to get Lamont's thoughts on it, this will be the first time all season that Arizona will have the same starting quarterback 3 games in a row. So you get that continuity, even with the limits on Will Plummer's abilities. I think that helps a great deal. Also, our guy Matt Moreno with Go Easy Cats noted the Jetfish has 1 win as a head coach, interim head coach as it may be, and it was against Cal. So maybe is this the week? Or I know we're gonna go through this whole song and dance again, but we're gonna talk about it, and I'm excited to have Lamont join us here.
Well, let's set up the show. First of all, not only are we going to have a football great in Lamont Lovett join us here momentarily, but a former basketball great and now also broadcaster now for the Pac-12 Network, Matt Muehlebach, going to join us in the second segment to preview basketball and his thoughts on the scrimmage on Monday night. But without further ado, let's bring on our friend Lamont Lovett to join us here in Wildcat Country. Lamont, always glad to have you. And now it kind of feels like, I know they're 0-8, but it kind of feels like we're riding a wave of positivity. I mean, you as a former player have to be thrilled with the effort that the guys are playing with right now, despite the record.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's really ever been an issue with effort with this team. I think it's been more of a situation of learning and in depth and, just improving from week to week. And that's really what, going into the year, obviously, expected to see some victories, and there's still an opportunity for it. But I felt like going into the season also that this team had to be very lucky with injuries. They had to because they were razor thin as far as the depth went going into this one. So going into this one, if they didn't, if they had any major injuries along the line, I knew that it would get a little sketchy for them, and you can kind of see them stacking up a little bit right now. But I think the thing that's positive about it, particularly after watching the USC game, was that these guys got a lot of fight in them. And they continue to battle, and they've been in most of their games this year. But what I think that some of the things where the depth kind of shows up is kind of in the fourth quarter, when you kind of see them kind of get worn down sometimes a little bit. And I think that that's where having that, those second line players being just as good as the first line players and not really being a drop off, those are some of the things that kind of showed up a little bit. So I think that, those are the important things that where recruiting comes into play. And when we talk about recruiting also, we'll talk about the quarterback situation. You had basically 2 freshmen going into the season, and you had, a transfer that came in. That's a situation where, that I think most coaches would struggle in those situations. And just as they finally started to get a little steam, Jordan McLeod gets injured. So, it's just this is one of those years that they're just going to have to continue to battle and find victories where they can and go from there.
Yeah, and Lamont, I mean, when you look at, I know you probably didn't get a chance to see the game though. ASU was, I mean, that was a team that played with no fight. Shane, I know you watched both games. You watched the ASU game, and then you watched the Wildcats game. In terms of effort, I mean, you can't even compare the two teams, right? You have to look at Arizona playing their butts off for Jedd Fisch, albeit against the USC team that, was what it was. But ASU, on the other hand, looked like it quit on Herm Edwards.
It's funny to see the panic among ASU fans. Sorry, Edmond, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I just think it's funny to see the panic among Sun Devil fans right now. Like, are we really going to lose to this team right now? And again, that's a few weeks down the road. Who knows what it's going to be like? And I don't know if I'd be bold to pick Arizona to win that game in Tempe, but it's fascinating how things change from week to week. And Eric, you talked about from the beginning of the season. You said I want to see this team. I want to see it be a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. Well, most of the time that's been the case. And to Lamont's point, they just don't have the horses to finish. The Washington game was the one they really should have finished. And Will Plummer makes the big mistake. And then I feel like the game was really over then, even though they're still up by 9 points. But they're certainly capable of winning games. They have to play almost perfect. They can't have drive-killing penalties. They can't have turnovers. And they have to have some other breaks go their way. They have to have a random bounce that ends up in a defender's hand for a pick six or a fumble recovery or a block punt. They have to play almost perfect and then some to win. And I think that we haven't talked about Cal yet, but I think I feel better about their chances against Cal a couple of weeks ago. And I think Cal is finally starting to put things together a little bit. I'm going to get into that a little bit more later, but it's weird to think that this team isn't really that far off, but I don't think they are. I think we'd all feel a lot better if they had beaten NAU. I think we'd look at it and be like, okay, they're 1-7, it's about what we expected, and they're competitive. That's what we wanted to see. The fact they just don't have a win is what's driving us crazy. We just want to get that losing streak behind us. Hopefully it'll happen this weekend, but like I said, against a Cal team that's finally starting to hit its stride, it seems like that's going to be tough unless they play just about perfect.
Lamont, offensively, I saw a lot of good things that I didn't really expect to see on Saturday. Now, Jamari Joyner doubtful for the game on Saturday night or on Saturday afternoon against Cal with a knee injury, which is kind of a bummer. But the deep balls, I mean, obviously the touchdown early on to Cunningham was a shock to all of us. But Will Plummer throwing the ball down the field, not being afraid. What do you think changed about Jedd Fisch's game plan? I mean, was it the fact that Plummer had such a good week of practice last week? I mean, what can you tell us on the inside as to what caused this kind of seismic shift in the aggressiveness?
I don't think that his game plan necessarily changed, so to speak. I think what happened was that his quarterback started to come along. He started to see the field better. He started to, get rid of the ball on time. He started, and that's what, when I was referring to, having the freshman guys, and you remember going into the season, everyone was making having kind of this think about, well, you don't have a starting quarterback. Well, because no one had really asserted themselves and taken over that role. And as we, here we are, 7-8 games into the season now, that position is finally starting to, after everyone's gotten hurt, it's finally starting to kind of straighten itself out a bit. But that shows you the issues that they had going into the season that no one had ever, really taken over. I thought McLeod at one point looked like he was going to be that guy. Then he gets injured. So, with this type of an offense, a pro-style offense where, you really depending on a precision passing game. And then when you got an offensive line that's, kind of really been developing as the season's gone on, they've improved. But I think there's no doubt that if you look at the first game and you look at where they are right now, that they've come a long way. So put all those things together, it kind of adds up to not having really good offense is really what it comes down to. I'm not one of those people that buys into it's just play calling. I think to me, that's a lazy take. I think you really have to look at everything because I don't think, the coach forgot how to coach this season, when he's been at places where, for example, when he was at UCLA, in the first 3 games of the year out the gate, his first year, they scored 45 points in the first game. They scored 44 points in the second game. And they scored 56 points in the second game and 45 points in the third game. So I don't think from there until now he's just forgot how to coach. I think that personnel has a lot to do with it. Having an established quarterback who can actually run your stuff makes all the difference in the world. So I just think that's just kind of where we are. I believe that as you start to see him get more, get the quarterback position solidified and continue to build the offensive line and continue to build the whole team, I think you're gonna see, the type of play caller that he is. You're gonna see more of his system. But I just think that, again, everybody wanted everything all at once, and that's just not going to be the case this year. It's just not where we are. I was hopeful, and everybody was optimistic that was where they were going to be, but it's not. But the positive thing is they're getting better, and you can kind of see glimpses of what could be and what's to come if they can continue to grow, continue to recruit, and just get more dogs in here. And over time, it'll come together. The thing that gives me hope is these guys are playing really, really hard, and that's one thing that that doesn't just happen, just by just showing up. I mean, that they're being coached, and the guys are playing hard. They're playing their hearts out. They're not quitting. They're not giving up, but they're just a little bit undermanned in areas. And when you have to play perfect in order to win the game, it just to me that just shows that you probably just need to keep continue to recruit and get better where you have more margin for where you can make a mistake and then that not be the game, not cost you the game because you had a little penalty there. And one of the things that really showed up in the USC game is when they started, stretching the field and throwing the ball downfield. Guess what? You didn't have to keep, one penalty didn't just ruin the entire drive when all of a sudden you could go 70 yards or 60 yards. And that was the element that I actually pointed to before the game that I was saying in my pregame. That's what's been missing from That's what's been missing from this team, the threat of going over the top and stretching the field. Teams are playing up because they're like, all they can do is just throw little short passes, and they're just sitting on that stuff. Well, all of a sudden they go over the top, and guess what? They score 30-something points in a game. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I just think that's, they needed the element to run this system. That's a big part of their element. If you look at, like I said, when you look at the year when he was at UCLA, that team was bombs away. They threw the ball all over the yard. So a lot of it comes down to, who you have, that has the keys to your system, who's driving it. You got to have a guy there. And so, fortunately, Plummer is coming along, and he really, in that last game, he took some big steps. And I was so thrilled for him because, I know that he's a guy that works really hard and he puts out the maximum effort. But he's still a freshman and he's still learning, and it looked like the light bulb just came on for him in that game, and that's exciting to see because the whole offense looked different. It just looked like a completely different offense when he's getting rid of the ball. And the good thing about it is he was under a lot of pressure. He took took a few sacks in that game, and those are the situations where in the past he kind of folded and probably folded up his tent. He just continued to battle, and that shows growth to me.
Yeah, I mean, Shane and I had both been very critical of Plummer's performance this year. Obviously, against NAU, it was dreadful. Colorado, when he came in the game, obviously the game was pretty much over anyways. But he did show some definite signs of progression, which was good. Shane, I know people are probably listening to this, and they're like, one thing that you guys have not mentioned yet is how bad the officiating was on Saturday night. And I know this is the last thing about the USC game that I want to talk about. But Shane, just from watching it as a fan, then we'll get Lamont's take after that. As a former player, I mean, that had to be one of the poorest officiated games I've seen in a while. And poor Jed Fish, because you just can't get any breaks when, obviously the calls went against you every single time.
I tweeted it out during the game, and I'll say it here. Arizona is not good enough to depend on the competence of Pac-12 officials. They're just not. That doesn't mean they don't deserve a fair outcome. But holding penalties against USC they missed. I'm trying to remember some. I lost count of all the things that really could have gone the other way. And I'm so tired of blaming the officials for losses. But yeah, it was especially bad. There's no doubt it was especially bad in that game. But I was thinking, Lamont, you mentioned the Arizona's ability now to have big chunk plays now that Will Plummer's opened up the offense a bit. I thought back to that one drive against Washington. It was the second half where Arizona, it was a great drive. It was like a 15-play drive, ate up 7-8 minutes off the clock. But it was like these little 4-yard plays here, a little run play here, a screen pass there, and they couldn't afford a penalty. Well, they got a holding penalty in that stalled the drive. They had to settle for a field goal. Now with the offense more open, maybe you survive a holding penalty. Those are still drive killers, but maybe all of a sudden now, like a 2nd and 15 doesn't look quite as daunting as it did, or possible as it did a couple weeks ago. So I think that's huge. Excuse me. As far as I want to dive into a little bit to the Cal game, because I think Chase Garbers in particular are starting to put it together. He has 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions in his last 3 games. And Cal's one of the better rushing teams in the Pac-12, and despite their record, they're 3rd in the Pac-12 in yards allowed and tied for 3rd in sacks. So I think their talent level is starting to catch up to their record. And like I said, I think Arizona may be catching them at the wrong time, but I think it's going to be another situation where Arizona's going to have to avoid the silly penalties, and on top of that, hope Pac-12 officials don't screw them over. And that's a tall road to overcome. But hopefully they'll be able to do it this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this team doesn't have a lot of margin for error. They have to play really well, and that's been proven already to win games. But they also proved in the last game that you don't have to be perfect either to have an opportunity to win. What you have to do is you have to make plays. And at the end of the day, that's what this is going to come down to. There's not an easy game on their schedule. There's no gimmies on the schedule. They're going to have to, play better than the team that they're playing against to win. It's not impossible to do it. It's just tougher under the circumstances that they have right now. And then with the injuries kind of stacking up a little bit, what you're hoping is that they maybe can get some guys back on defense a little healthier, because the defense has been getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And the guys are playing their hearts out, but it's just tough when we got guys that are like I heard like Jalen Harris played like 80 something plays.
Played every snap.
That's a tough way.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to get injured. I mean, it's impressive, but you don't want to have that type of wear and tear on guys. You would like to be able to, spell those guys. And you're up here facing these up-tempo offenses where they basically make you play 2 games inside of 1 game with the number of plays that they run. So, you got to have guys and you got to have depth there. And so hopefully they can get some more people back for this game. But as far as Cal goes, Cal is definitely an improving team. The thing about Cal is they've always played under this coach. They've always played great defense. And I think that this team is no exception. They're going to play tough defense. And so it's going to be a great challenge for Arizona. So Plummer's going to have to be on again. They're going to have to make some plays. They're going to be a little bit different than USC was. Because these guys don't necessarily come with a ton of pressure. They play more similar to what Washington played. So it'll be interesting to see how Arizona attacks them. But the thing that gives me hope is, like I said, Plummer played under pressure the entire game against SC. And then there were times where the line battled back and gave him protection. And then there were times where, they got after him a little bit. But if he can just battle like that and continue to find plays where they're available, make plays when they present themselves, not make the big mistake. We do have talent on offense. We've got guys that can make plays. It's about getting the ball to them, getting it to them on time. That's been, those have been some of the issues that have plagued them during the year. And some of the things that was frustrating the coach. He would always say, when reviewing the film, he said, we had a guy open on the corner in the end zone, and we threw it to the flats, and stuff like that. Those are the things that, a more experienced quarterback, when he sees those plays present himself, he's ripping the ball right to those spots, and he's making those plays. And that's what they have to do in order to win. The team that makes the most plays and makes the fewest mistakes is going to win the game, bottom line. The team that turns the ball over the most is probably going to lose the game. So those are the things that, first and foremost, that you do to lose games, turning the ball over, tons of penalties. Got to clean that up. And if you do that and make more plays, you got a chance.
All right, Lamont, we've got 4 games left in the year. We've got Cal at home, then Utah at home, and then at Washington State, which is a night game on a Friday night, short week, which is difficult. And then, of course, the Territorial Cup, where you got to throw records out the window, especially the way ASU's been playing lately. Just give us a couple things that down the stretch you expect to see from Arizona. Maybe give kind of fans, as best you can, kind of a preview of what we should be looking to see from the Wildcats over the final month.
Wow. I don't know. I think that they're going to fight their butts off. I think that's what you can expect. I think they're going to fight hard. This team showed me that there's no quit in them. Right now, with how thin their depth is, it's hard to make all types of predictions at this point. I think that the main thing that we're looking for is these guys to come out and play hard. I think that, play hard and like I said, try to make more plays than the other team. If they do that, I still think there's victories to be had there. They just gotta put together. That's not the great, exciting, sizzling answer, but it's an answer.
Good enough. Shane Lamont says that victories are there. How confident are you today, as we record this podcast, that Arizona has a pretty good chance to win a football game before the year's out?
I'm so torn because I can't. I have a hard time still, even to this point, seeing them go 0-12. But I also just don't know where the win is. And if they don't win this weekend, I really don't know where the win is. At Washington State's going to be tough. I think that game was more about ASU losing than it was about Washington State winning. But still, the Cougars are pretty good. They took Cal apart a few weeks ago at Berkeley. And then, of course, Utah and ASU. I know you throw the records out, but if you look at talent, it's a scary proposition. So, confidence level, I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 10, I put it right in the middle, I guess, just because I feel like it's tough because I feel like this team deserves to have a victory.
Yes.
If you just go by, and I know it sounds like such a cliche, you just go by heart and you go by the resiliency they've shown after losing week after week in so many heartbreakers. This team has earned victory in there, and I so hope they get it. I so hope they get it on homecoming or before the season ends. I would take one at ASU in a heartbeat if that's the way the season ends. But I hope there's one in there. My brain is telling me no. My heart is being stubborn and saying that there's going to be one in there. I don't know if it's going to come against Cal, but certainly looks like their best chance at the moment.
All right, Lamont, final question for you, and this is off the beaten path. If Jedd Fisch comes to you in 3 weeks and says, Lamont, we want you to come down and give a speech to the team about what the ASU game means to you, give us a preview of what you would say.
First of all, he wouldn't need to do that because he has Chuck Cecil on his staff. And he's got Brandon on his staff, and he's got Ricky Hundley on his staff. If those guys can't get you motivated for that game, I don't think anybody can. But you know what I would tell these guys, and I really, honestly, for the guys who are on the team, you don't have to tell them that either, because if you were anywhere near that game last year, when they hung 70 on him and they continued to just try to rub it in as best they can. I think all they need to do is put on a few highlights from that game, put on a few highlights from the past games, talk about how people don't care about people in this town. Some people don't care about the game, anything else you do, but you win that game, that wins the community over. It's a rivalry. It's a blood rivalry. It's a hate rivalry. So I think that it's never been about talent. It's never been about who you have on your roster or the better teams, because I've been a part of teams where they were way better than us and we still beat them. So it just comes down to who wants it more. It comes down to heart, focus, controlled aggression, and just having it in your mind that you're going to dominate that person across from you for 4 quarters and that you refuse to lose, and that's really the mentality you have to have, because when I played, we never thought we were going to lose that game. We never thought we were going to lose, and no matter how good or bad we were, we thought no matter what we do, we're going to beat these guys. I guarantee you that. And you just it's kind of a mindset that you have to have. And, coming from where these guys have come from and going through what this team has gone through, I'll tell you what, when they do get over that hump and when they get to the point of winning, they're going to be a really hard team to beat, because they've gone through what no one else has gone through. These guys have had to learn from scratch, and they've had to go endure this losing streak and all that stuff, and it gives you a certain level of grit. It either breaks you or it makes you really strong. And so far, what I've seen from these guys, I haven't seen any quit in them, and I think that's the most important thing, is just to go out and fight. I don't think that there's any dishonor in losing a game if you lay it all up there on the line. I think if you quit and you fold up your tent, then we got another conversation to have. But I haven't seen that in these guys, and I think that as long as you keep that mentality, continue to improve, like they are, I think they're headed in the right direction. I still say that there's a victory out there. I don't know which game it's going to be, and I don't know which team it is, but I know that they can win the game, because they were in the game with Oregon. They were in the game with UCLA. They had opportunities to win every single one of those games, and it wasn't luck. It was they were making plays, and so at the end of the day, you just have to make more plays than the guy in front of you. The game is simple. It really is. It's not that complicated. It's about tackling and running and not making mistakes and not turning over the ball and making more plays than the other guy and being the tougher team. And this team showed me they're tough. I just think that, they're just not there yet. They're not accustomed to playing at the level they need to play at, but they're learning. They're learning that. They're playing with a lot of heart, and that'll get you some victories down the line. I'm confident in that. So I'm just, glad that we get a chance to watch it, and I look forward to the future.
Well, Lamont, we always appreciate having you on. You are not only a great supporter of the team and a former player, but somebody who does a great job as a longtime broadcaster. So we appreciate your optimism. It's tough when the team is 0-8, but you brought out the positivity for us to look forward to, and for that we are very grateful. Coming up next year on Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing, let's talk to Matt Muehlebach, Pac-12 Network broadcaster, about the Arizona basketball team. Very pleased to welcome our buddy Matt Muehlebach, Pac-12 Network analyst and four-year letterman as a basketball player at Arizona, who the last time he was on the show, we talked about his memorable play in the Duke game at McHale Center. I believe that was 91 against Bobby Hurley, right. Matt. So you'll have to regale us with that story once again. But first, I want to talk about your first impressions last night. You called the game against Eastern New Mexico. Wildcats scored at will, which was awesome to see that the offense. Just your thoughts on Tommy Lloyd's style of play and what you think of this year's roster.
Well, first of all, fellas, thank you, Eric. Thanks, Shane, for having me on. Really appreciate it. Love your show, and really appreciate what you guys do, throwing out all the Wildcat stuff out there and info and content. So, thanks a lot. I was really impressed. I think the first thing that I wasn't necessarily surprised with. Let's start with Tommy Lloyd, right? A new era. I thought Sean Miller was an amazing coach while he was at Arizona. I thought he did a great job. You could make the argument. Obviously, the one thing he didn't do was go to the Final Four. I mean, that was kind of the missing link to his resume. And I also think, let's just call it out. Like the last 3 years have been tough. I think on him and the program and so forth. So it was really interesting just to see a new coach on the sideline. And my first impression with Tommy was the guy's he's just not nervous about anything, right? He's very genuine, laid back. I know it's an exhibition game. He had the golf shirts on, him and the staff, and I just appreciate his unpretentiousness. He's not pretentious. He's just easygoing, but he's got an edge too. And there was a story years ago that I remember when Steve Kerr, became the head coach of the Warriors, and he had never been a head coach. And, by all accounts, Steve Kerr's a really nice guy. He's one of the greatest guys in the world. And, there were some people that had asked, can Steve Kerr make the hard calls, make the hard decisions, do the things you have to do as a head coach? And I think we found out pretty quickly he could. And his little what do you call that? The board that he used on the sideline that he would break, 4 or 5 times every other game. Found out too, but Tommy can do that, and I've seen him in practice with a tone that's a Sean Miller-esque tone. But he's a different guy. He's a different type of personality. But I love his laid back nature, and so that was awesome to see. And the team is good. I mean, they have a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and credit Tommy Lloyd for that, for number one, getting to Arizona and keeping guys that were here in Tucson, and number two, then going out and getting some pieces that really will help. And I think, we saw it right away last night with Justin Kier. He had a terrific game, really a 6-year guy in college. Kim Akins, same type of thing, very experienced guy. They were able to get him from Eastern Washington. And then the one guy we didn't see, and I'll tell you, I saw him in practice, who I absolutely love. I would be buying stock heavy on him, is Pelle Larsson. I really, really like his game for a lot of reasons. But I loved what they did. I loved the way they played. Pretty loose, pretty free. As you said, Eric, it's an exhibition game, so let's not – as they say in Pulp Fiction, let's not get too excited right now about stuff. Let's we have to tamp it a little bit, but at the same time, from what I saw, a lot of good hope for the season.
Well, first of all, Matt, thanks for letting me give me an excuse to show off my Steve Kerr rookie card here again. So
nice. That's probably worth some pretty good money.
It was worth more about a year ago when they were.
Yeah.
Hopefully the value will go back up again. The Warriors do well, but anyway, yeah. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. Well, I want to ask you about some specific players. You already mentioned a couple. The two guys that most people are talking about going into the season, Ben Mathurin and Azuolas Tubelis. What are your overall thoughts of them? I mean, beyond just what you saw in an exhibition game, what do you think about them and maybe some of the leaps they can make in year two?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this on the air, not since it was Dylan Brooks and Jordan Bell were the last two all-freshman Pac-12 guys that came back. So to have two guys of that ilk, of that talent, to come back their sophomore year, usually you see these guys go pro. I mean, they just, if you kind of get a sniff of, oh, he's pretty good, a lot of times we see now guys going pro, even if they're not going to get drafted, right? And so first of all, good decision by both of them to come back, I think. I think they weren't ready to go pro, but very talented in kind of some similar ways. I mean, obviously different body types and different games, but they're both really athletic, strong. They kind of can dominate guys at that position, at their positions. The difference is, Ben shoots it so well. I mean, he's a knockdown shooter, shot it really well as a freshman. I mean, he's, to me, might be as good a shooter as anyone in the league. Tubelis, Zoo as they call him, not that type of guy shooting the ball, but just physicality and athleticism. But I think the big thing for them, Shane, is just being consistent and starting to do the little things that matter, and not getting caught up in, I was all freshman and all Pac-12 and all this as a freshman. Being able to really take a leap, because most guys, as I said, if you see that success and really big success like in Evan Mobley, he goes pro. And most guys were probably like myself that, they are even better than me for sure. I shouldn't even use myself as an example as a freshman, where they had good years, but not great, right? And they showed the promise. So it could get easy to say, I'm kind of the man and I'm coming back. And so I think for them, it's a matter of just getting better at the little things. For Ben Mathurin, it's like, hey, how many rebounds can you get every game? And we know you jump out of the gym. You're an incredible athlete, in the open court. How do you make, Eric and Shane better on the basketball court? Like you guys are out there. How do you make those guys better? Get them good shots, and Tommy runs a lot of screen and roll. Last year we saw James Akinjo at the point, and he was kind of the one guy that ran pick and roll the whole possession. Everybody else kind of did their thing and off the pick and roll. Tommy wants four guys to run the pick and roll in the same possession. If Kerr Kriisa doesn't get it, man, it's Ben Mathurin. If he doesn't get it, it comes across, it's Tubelis. If he doesn't get it, it's Dalen Terry. And so how does Ben Mathurin make other guys on the team better? Get his assists up, get to the rim more. We saw him get to the rim. I love that. A lot of free throws. And I think Tubelis the same thing.
Let me ask you about Christian Koloko. Had a double-double in the exhibition game. Also showed a little bit of range on that three-point shot. I don't know how much of that he's going to do in the regular season, but I know that Arizona fans are hoping for a lot more out of him to pick up some of the slack for some of the guys they lost overall. What are your thoughts on him based on just what you saw in the small sample size, and how good do you think he can be this season?
Well, I'm trying to tamp my own emotions down on him because I love him. I'm so high on him. I think last year I predicted he'd be the most improved player in the league, and he wasn't. And he kind of had a little bit of a kind of an up and down year. And I felt like we talked about it, the COVID year hurt him. He didn't get a chance to really get that personal attention and workouts and weight room stuff. He was able to do it this year. And I think Tommy Lloyd and his staff does a great job with bigs. They really, really, they get on, they work them a lot. And I can already see the improvement. I just think, right now, so the three things he does at really an elite elite level, as good as anyone in college almost. Obviously block shots. He's 7'1" with a 7'5" or 7'6" wingspan. I think on that pick and roll action that you'll see Tommy and his team run constantly, he picks and rolls for the lob as good as anyone in college because of that length. He's quick. He gets it. He screens and he's gone. And I think you're going to see him get a ton of alley-oops. And I think just running the floor. I mean, he runs the floor. When they go the other way, he does a great job getting down there. So I'm really high on him, and I'd be surprised if he didn't have a really big year.
Matt, I want to talk to you about Kerr Kriisa, who is a very interesting case study in that last year he played 8 games, and every field goal he made was a three-pointer. And last night was something similar, even though he had a 2-pointer, which was exciting, but he wasn't very good from three-point range last night, just didn't shoot the ball well. Just your impressions of him, and is he the right guy to be running Arizona's offense under Tommy Lloyd?
I think so. I like him because he'll run that first screen and roll. If nothing's there, he'll pass it and move. And I mentioned Pelle Larsson. He does the same thing. He's a great guy in your offense that you need guys that catch it and it doesn't stick, and they move it and it gets back to them 3 passes later and they make a play. And I think Kerr does that in a great way. He plays with the one thing. I actually want to ask Tommy Lloyd this. I don't think they've said anything to Kriisa about the way he pushes and the pace he plays with, but it's natural. He plays with a natural, just a fast pace. He gets it. He goes. Even in the half court, he never walks it up. He's not slow with the ball. And so for me, I don't think they need him to – he's not going to be John Stockton, right? He's not going to average – 13 and 10. I mean, he's not going to have 10 assists every game. It's just, he's going to get it, get the team running. And I think he's going to make his, 2 or 3 threes a game. Every one that he shot was right on target. It was just either a tiny bit long or short or just missed by an inch. And you could tell he was a little frustrated with that. But I always said as a player, like, hey, have a good game in the exhibition game, but it's okay you don't have your career high because it doesn't count. So I think he'll be fine. And I think he'll do a great job, with what he has.
So last week we had Bruce Pascoe on, who obviously you know well as the beat writer for the Arizona Daily Star, and he picked Arizona to be 6th in the Pac-12 this season. Shane and I think that's a little bit low. What, in your opinion, are realistic expectations for the Wildcats? Where should they finish in conference play?
Great question. I think maybe the way to go about it is, okay, who's ahead of them, right? And I think you could make a really good argument. Well, obviously UCLA. I mean, they were in the Final Four and they have every guy back with two 5-stars coming in. So, their wings and. You got a point guard back who's a pass-first guy that, knows how to play. They have a great coach. So that's obviously the number 1 team in the conference. Everybody's shooting for them. I think Oregon is a good argument at 2 because they have guys back. Dane has shown what he can do. They have a system that's, been rolling for a long time now. Makes sense to me. I think Arizona's right around that 3 or 4 mark. And, I don't know – SC has talent back, but they certainly lost some really good players with Mobley, and I think they lost their 2 guard. And then you have a number of teams that have some talent, but maybe unproven. Oregon State had that great run, but they lost, Ethan Thompson and a couple other guys. They'll be in the mix, but I think Arizona 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the highest, but I like them in that 3 or 4 spot.
Matt, I want to ask you, it's a little off the wall, but about the 3-point shot in today's college basketball, because back when you played, you and Matt Othick were terrific behind the arc. But the 3-point shot was just really introduced a few years earlier, and now it seems like so many teams depend on that 3-point shot, and I know that Tommy Lloyd is obviously big on shooters. It looks like this team's got a ton of shooters. How important is the 3-point shot now compared to back when you played, and do you think some teams maybe rely on it a little too much?
Yeah, it's a great question that it's funny, like, I've talked a lot about this, thought a lot about it, look at the metrics. I've talked to guys like Steve Kerr and, coaches like Sean Miller or Tommy Lloyd. And it's such an interesting dynamic because the metrics themselves, just because of the numbers and the math on three-pointers. In fact, I remember, you go back to when I was playing, Lute Olson was very progressive and ahead of the world. And I remember him telling us, hey, guys, if you get an open three, take it. Because you can shoot, whatever the math was, 33% from three, and it's the same as shooting 50% from two. And, I remember Charles Barkley having a problem with the Warriors that first year they won the title. Like, they can't win at shooting threes and this and that. And then they won the next, 3 out of 4. So I think it's huge, Shane. I think it's something teams have to be able to do these days. But I will say this too, the threat of the three is some of the magic that made Gonzaga great, because they have a spread offense. And if you can, what made the Warriors great was everyone could make threes. You can't run a spread and, say you're going to shoot threes and spread them out if no one can shoot. So Gonzaga had all these guys that could shoot. They would spread you out. But what Tommy Lloyd will tell you is he's looking for, the best shot they can find. And if he can score a layup every time down, he's going to take a layup every single time down. Like, if you're going to give me a layup, I'll take that every time down. So when you see him spread like that, they're going to get a lot of – you remember Timmy last year. How many times did he get layups? I mean, it was just incredible. And so the threat of that, to me, opens the court, Shane, to your question, for you can just get great shots. So now, you saw a couple plays last night where they ran that pick and roll so well. And, the help guy in the baseline has got to either help out on the lob, he's got to help out on the point guard coming down, off the pick and roll, or he has to stay with his man in the corner. If you stay with your man, that's when Kriisa got that layup, right? If you help out on Kriisa, now the guy in the corner is wide open. So what it does is it just creates looks and open lanes and shots. And shoot, if you can get open threes, I think I would be a coach that would promote that all day long.
All right, my last question for you, Matt, and appreciate your time. You're going to be calling the regular season opener, the first game that counts, next week against NAU. Tommy Lloyd talked after the game about he's happy with where the team's at, but still pointed out things to work on. What would you like to see this team improve upon, not just in their regular season opener, but maybe through the non-conference schedule that you saw, that maybe like a couple things here and there they can fine-tune?
That's a great question. I hadn't even thought about that. I think we're all just basking in what a great game it was last night for the squad.
Yeah,
but
then they have fans back in the arena and everything. It was so refreshing.
I know.
To see.
It was so nice. A great point. It was so nice. I think for them, defensively, there's a lot of guys on that team that haven't really proven they're great defenders necessarily. Kriisa hasn't played a ton of minutes. He's shown he's a great guy at taking charges. I think Matherin can become a really elite defender. I think Dalen Terry can be an elite defender. I mentioned him almost in the same breath of an Andre Iguodala. Same length, same body type, athleticism. And then we know about, I mentioned Christian, obviously we know about his shot blocking, but I think this team defensively could be really good. And to me, if they're good defensively, they're going to be a joke offensively. Like, they're going to run down, and you get them in the open space. And I said this last night, this has been an Arizona tradition for a long time. Great athletes, great skill guys. You get going in the open court, it's over. Every game I've done at Arizona for the last 10 years, if I had $1 for every coach that said we got to stop Arizona in transition, I'd have a lot of money. And that's the thing, but you don't get in transition if you don't defend. And so we know Christian can block shots, but can they really become a great defensive team? I think Zoo's got to be part of that. Guys off the bench, Kyer, he's got experience. Aiken can guard anybody. That to me will be the difference. Look, a few years ago, we saw that DeAndre Ayton team in game 1 in the exhibition, and we said that team could win it all, right? And they lost in the first round of Buffalo by 30 points. So, it's a lot of chemistry. It's a lot of defense. It's a lot of those things. If they can defend, they can beat anybody in the country.
All right, Matt, last question. It's a two-part question. Good piece of trivia here. Who was the first player in Arizona basketball history to achieve a triple-double?
Shane Dale?
It was not Shane Dale. It was Shane. Do you know the answer to that? Do you know the answer to this question, Shane?
I actually don't. I mean, I had to guess. I would say Andre Iguodala, but I don't know.
I do know the answer. I do know the answer to that.
All right. So Shane, if I told you it happened on March 8th, 1990, would that help you?
That would narrow it down to not Andre Iguodala. Is it the guy we're talking to right now?
It is. Matt Muehlebach, first triple-double in Arizona basketball history in the Pac-12 tournament against USC. What do you remember about that game?
Well, it's funny because we played USC, and I remember, Baby Jordan. I was guarding him in a box and one in that game, and I was like, my whole mind was just about guarding him. He was an incredible college player. And I remember going 0 for 5 from 3 at halftime. I missed every three-pointer I took. I went in the locker room. I was so pissed off. I was kicking stuff. I was so mad. I was just like so down on myself. And then Lute used to give the rebound totals at halftime. And he went through them, usually with disdain to the big guys. Like he'd call them out. And he's going through the things, and he said, Matt, 8 rebounds. And I looked up, and I'm like, 8 rebounds, that's probably my career high at halftime. And so I remember thinking, well, if I have 8 rebounds, I think I had like 5 or 6 assists. I felt like, I actually thought, damn, I could get a triple-double. But I think I had like 2 points. So I was trying to get the points. Unlike guys that came after me like Damon Stoudemire, that probably had like 31, 15, and 12. But so I remember that and went out and got a few points. And I remember getting a couple rebounds right away. So I'm like, damn, I actually have the hardest part for me, which was the rebounds.
10 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists. First triple-double in Arizona basketball history. Forever the answer to a great trivia question. You guys listening can use that one going forward to your fellow Wildcat basketball fans. Matt, always great to talk to you. Just great analysis, great insight as always, and look forward to having you on again during the season.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, guys. Fun talking, and hope you have me on again. I'd love to talk about Arizona and the rest of the Pac-12. Should be a good season, actually, for Arizona and the Pac-12.
I want to read you a message from Josette, a small business owner in Scottsdale. Josette says, Backcourt Marketing created a social media strategy for all of my gyms. They post engaging content every day and have really brought up the analytics on all of my pages. We meet to go over marketing ideas every month, and I really appreciate their personalized approach. That, in a nutshell, is the kind of return on your investment that you can expect when you trust Backcourt Marketing to fulfill your company's social media needs. This is a company that helps businesses reach their target audience online and build a brand that will crush the competition. They're a dedicated, knowledgeable team of brand advocates, designers, and creative writers who will help take your business to the next level. Make sure to get your business noticed. Call 480-744-6173. That's 480-744-6173. Or email team, T-E-A-M, at backcourtmarketing.com to get started. And remember, Backcourt Marketing is the marketing agency for those who love competition.
Shane. I tried to spoon feed you the answer to the triple-double question with our guest, Matt Muehlebach. I mean, why would I ask that? But you realize that actually you were giving away the answer last night?
Yeah, Anthony Gimino gave it away because I mentioned we're going to have Matt Muehlebach on Wildcat Country this week on Twitter to plug it, and Anthony Gimino quote tweeted said, "That's Mr. Triple Double to you," and it went right over my head. I was literally given the answer unintentionally 24 hours beforehand. Yeah. I get tunnel vision sometimes. My wife can tell you all about that. I have no excuse. And
but who would have thought that?
Between no, definitely not. But between that and I'm sure my record in our picks last week, I'm sure you're going to bring up shortly. It's been a rough week for me.
Now, but wait a second. Now, in when it comes to football picks, you actually beat me. You went 7-5. I went 6-6. Oh. And so you have now beaten me. I think it's 4 out of the last 5 weeks, 3 out of the last 4 weeks. You now have a 5-game lead on me. I'm treading above 500. It's an embarrassment. So we're just going to pick fewer games this week because I just don't want to get embarrassed again.
But Eric, if you pick fewer games, you have less of a chance to catch up.
I'm not kidding. The way Shane, you see the way I pick games. I mean, the only thing that you and I are getting right now is the U of A games. I mean, we've learned to stop, and we'll see what happens this week. I don't know what you're thinking. You don't know what I'm thinking.
I think I'm 1-7 ppicking Arizona games because I can't imagine I picked against them again when they played NAU, even though I should have known better. So I think I'm confident
you're
to say that
7-1.
I picked 7 out of 8 correctly. Yes.
Yeah, I know I had him against San Diego State and I had him against NAU, and I think that's about it. So I'm probably 6-2. All right, let's go down. We've got 2 non-Pac-12 games and then 5 involving Pac-12 teams. So let's do this. Michigan State, who is now number 3 in the latest college football playoff rankings, which is don't even get us started on those. Alabama should not be 2. It's a joke. They go to Purdue this week. Purdue, remember, knocked off number 2 Iowa the other week. Shane, are you feeling an upset, or do you think Michigan State stays at number 3 or higher?
I'm going to make one real quick comment about the CFP. Oregon ahead of Cincinnati is ridiculous in every single way possible. But that's the only thing I'm going to say before we get started. I'm going to move on because I know we're kind of pushing an hour already. As far as Michigan State, Purdue, I was certain, Eric, Michigan was going to finally break through last weekend and beat their rival in a big game. And it looked like through 3 quarters, maybe they're going to do it. And then the rest of the game happened. Then Jim Harbaugh happened. Purdue's a very hot and cold team, and they've actually played better on the road lately. I'm going to roll the dice. Now that I've got a comfortable 5-game lead on you, I can afford to take these kinds of chances. I'm going to say that the good feelings of that win that Michigan State has over Michigan, they're not going to last long. You get a little complacent. Oh, look at us. We're number 3 in the CFP. I don't think the Spartans are a college football playoff team. I think they get exposed by Purdue this weekend.
Shane, that's a great pick. I think this is a perfect letdown spot. I love Purdue in this spot. 3-point underdogs at home. I think Purdue wins the game outright. I don't think they're that great, but they look good enough against Nebraska on the road last week to come back home. If they can shut down Kenneth Walker, who very well might be on his way to New York for the Heisman ceremony, Michigan State's running back, I think they have a good chance to win, and I think they will do somewhat that, and Purdue wins the game outright. I believe it's the only game of ranked teams this weekend. Auburn at Texas A&M. And not that either of us really care about this game all that much. I'm taking A&M just because they're at home, but Auburn's been better than I thought they would be. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to roll with the Tigers, so we'll disagree on this one, Eric. I think Bo Nix is on a mission right now. I think he's going to go on the road and beat an A&M team that I can't help but think is a little bit overrated. I know they beat Alabama. I know that the 2 rankings are comparable, but I think Auburn's a legit top 10 team, not quite a college football playoff team. I think they're good enough to give Alabama a hard time when they play in the Iron Bowl. I think they're going to take A&M on the road this weekend.
All right, so we're going to disagree on that one, but this one I have a feeling we won't disagree on. Going into the Pac-12, Utah now has a 1-game lead in the Pac-12 South, which is essentially 2 games as they own the tiebreakers over both ASU and UCLA. They travel to the Farm to take on a Stanford team that has underachieved and lost in the final seconds to Washington last week. I think Utah wins this game and they continue their semi-roll. Would you agree?
Inexplicable Stanford beat Oregon. That's the main reason why I think Oregon shouldn't be in the top 4 as of now. Every team not named Oregon has at least 3 losses in the Pac-12, and that's just crazy. And the Pac-12 keeps doing its cannibal thing. Stanford may find a way to win this game. But yeah, I think the Utes are a little too good to lose this one. Stanford's coming off a loss to a Washington team that we know is not that good, so I'm going to go with the Utes on the road.
So speaking of Washington and Oregon, it's that titanic matchup in the Northwest this weekend. Oregon is traveling to Washington. Washington's had 2 interesting games in the fourth quarter, losing to Arizona. They come back and win. Losing to Stanford, they come back and win. Can they pull the upset and knock Oregon out of the CFP? Or do the Ducks move on?
Yeah, I really want to pick Washington, but I just can't. The first 3 quarters of that game in Tucson are imprinted in my brain. I think Oregon has been vastly overrated, like I said, by College Football Playoff Committee. I think they're going to get exposed soon enough, but I think they'll take care of business on the road against the Washington team that is maybe certainly the biggest disappointment in the Pac-12 and one of the biggest disappointments in the country to this point.
It's weird, Shane, because, you just mentioned it. It's hard to root against your own conference, especially when there's not like a hatred for the school. But I really am not rooting for Oregon because I just don't think they're one of the 4 best teams. I think Ohio State's better than both them and Cincinnati. I know what happened in week 2, but I think Ohio State has gotten better since then. And I think Oregon's gotten worse. So it wouldn't bother me to see Washington pull the upset and make me feel a little bit better about Arizona's close loss to them the other week. Oregon's going to win this game close, but Ducks, hang on. All right, next one. Oregon State goes to Colorado. I think this one's quick. Colorado's had one good game all year, maybe against A&M where they kept it close, but destroying Arizona 34-zip. Outside of that, I don't think they're very good. They got blown out by Cal last week. Can we both agree Oregon State's going to win this game convincingly?
We can. I've already picked Colorado too many times this season. And Oregon State's lost our last 2 road games, including at Cal last weekend. But I think the talent gap is too big for that to really matter at Colorado. So against my better judgment, again, I'm going to pick another road team and go with Oregon State.
All right. The second to last game we're going to talk about here involves 2 teams that we pretty much don't like. ASU coming off that absolute debacle, by the way, giving up 56 straight points between the second half of the Utah game and the first 29 minutes of the first half against Washington State, where they were outscored 8 touchdowns to 0 combined. And now they are taking on USC, who is now without their best player in Drake London, who's out for the year after he got injured against Arizona on the touchdown. I think ASU probably wins this game, Shane. I think they're a little over a touchdown favorite. You would figure they would bounce back. USC didn't seem to do a lot in the passing game after London went down. So I'm going ASU, but I'm really unsure about this one.
It's a fascinating game, isn't it, as to whether ASU, because the talk this week has been all about his ASU quit on Herm Edwards, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just being stubborn, but I have a feeling the Sun Devils are going to respond positively after being ripped in the press and on social media for the last week. And USC team tends to play a little bit better, especially on defense on the road. So that makes things kind of interesting. I'm kind of surprised the spread is as big as it is. I think it ought to be closer to a pick 'em. And USC is dialed in offensively now, but yeah, like you said, losing Drake London is massive. And between that and ASU having a little bit of a chip on its shoulder now, I think ASU is going to take advantage, and they're probably going to do enough to win this game at home.
Finally, it is homecoming in Tucson, and one that, I'm kind of bummed about. This will be the first Pac-12 Arizona game I will not attend. Just can't make it this weekend, so I will not be there for the first time in a Pac-12 game at Arizona Stadium, excluding last year, since 2005. So I'm kind of bummed about that, but I'll be watching on TV with everybody else. And this is probably Arizona's best chance to win a game the rest of the season. Shane, you thought that Jamari Joyner, you made a prediction a couple weeks ago that Jamari Joyner would be starting for Arizona. Well, he very well might have been or had more reps, but he's hurt and probably won't play this week because of a knee injury. Does that change your pick? And if so, let's hear what you got for Cal at Arizona.
I don't know if it changes my pick, but, as much as I'd love to see it, Eric, and I think it's certainly possible Arizona finally breaks through, but I think Arizona just got Cal at the wrong time. You go back and you look at Cal's schedule, they've lost a lot of close games to pretty good teams, and they finally turned the corner. Now, they have yet to win a road game this year, but all 3 of their road losses have been very close, including at Oregon. And all those losses were against teams much better than Arizona. So I think Arizona might put together a very good showing on Saturday. I think Will Plummer is going to continue to improve. I think that this team rallies around him. They got a lot of players at skill positions still that can make big plays in space. I just don't know if it's going to be enough against a Cal team that's finally getting its act together that I thought was going to be better than they've been to this point of the season. So I'm going to go with Cal. I think the spread's 12 points or so. I think Cal's going to cover. I'm going to go 31-17 Golden Bears.
Shane, you did it again. It's unbelievable that you and I almost had the exact same score. This would be the third time. I have Cal 30-17.
That's way different.
Seriously,
Eric, that's way different.
We at 1 point different. The crazy thing is I write my picks down, my score predictions down before we do this segment, just because I want to be able to go into it and kind of narrate it and everything like that. And literally, for the third time, including 2 weeks in a row, we essentially the same score. Yeah, I mean, we're right on par here. I think Arizona plays a better game for probably 3 quarters, goes into the fourth quarter, and Cal puts another one on them, and just kind of similar to the UCLA game. I think that's what we're going to see. So, let's hope they surprise us. I'm just not convinced that Will Plummer by himself wins a Pac-12 football game and is ready for that. But the Wildcats are fighting, and that's what we want to see. Show some fight. And as we talked to our good buddy Lamont Lovett earlier in the show, there's some positives, and it's nice to be able to talk about those as well. Thanks to Matt Muehlebach, Pac-12 Network analyst, and by the way, the first Wildcat to ever achieve a triple-double on the basketball court. So very much appreciate him joining us. Thank you to our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing, who is now on Twitter. Check them out at Backcourt MKTG on Twitter. That is Backcourt MKTG. They're going to have some fun things that we will post on the Wildcat Country Twitter feed as we go along here. And of course, our friends at All AZ Sports. Check them out at All AZ Sports. And thanks to them for producing the show as they do every week. So for Shane Dale, I am Eric Cohen. As always, bear down.